Hello everybody, welcome to this month's LEGO Rewind where we take another look at older tired LEGO themes. Today is all about one of my most requested lines, Knight's Kingdom. Surprised? That's understandable. A lot of younger viewers just started tuning in around 2004 when Knight's Kingdom 2 was released, which LEGO neglected to clarify, just calling it Knight's Kingdom as if it was the first. Not so. Knight's Kingdom 1 came and went in 2000. It was a return to form for LEGO Castle back to those traditional, fairly realistic European stylings, for the most part, after the more fantasy-driven lines we covered in the last episode, along with experimental ones like Ninja. And while it may not be the first castle sub-theme to feature multiple factions within a single line, it was the first to do so in the very loud, consolidated way we're used to seeing nowadays, with the soldiers led by King Leo and the bandits by Cedric the Bull. While primarily blue, a few of the lions did share the bull's red and black, but there were enough other traits specific to each side that it was still pretty clear who stood on which, and the minifigs themselves display a good amount of personality for the time. These days it would be even more clear-cut. The lions were centralized with a focus on fortifications, while the bulls boasted machines of war, siege towers, battering rams, catapults, and flamethrowers?
Gee, I sure would like to set those people on fire over there.
Hey, quite a concept.
While the lions had a beautiful castle to their name, the bulls had no such accompanying set, but according to lore, they lived in the Dark Forest, a short-lived line from 1996 that only had 3 sets, and was itself something of a continuation of 1987's Forest Men, which only saw 1 release per year for a while. Dang, we're spoiled. So if you had any Dark Forest sets lying around, you could just put the bulls in that. Play pretend that they're driving the forest men out of the woods to take it over, and put them on the same display across from the Lion's Castle, facing each other. I'd like to see some pictures of that. Though interestingly, on LEGO Island 2, the bulls do have a fortress of their own, so I guess they were really gaining ground for a while there. They also got their own game and appear in a few others. While the line only lasted a year, it was like an explosion, with a whopping 14 sets. The builds themselves were not great. It was that era when sets were being juniorized, with lots of big pieces and shorter, more simplistic builds, though Knight's Kingdom didn't suffer nearly as much as lines like Arctic did. In fact, I'd say that most of these builds are quite standard and still hold up, even the smaller ones. But make no mistake, when the builds are weak, they are pitiful. More than a few recent lines feature collectible pieces of armor across the entire wave you can assemble around one minifig, and that trend began with this, as far as I can tell. Like, look at how proud they were to show off those chrome pieces. I know I've gushed about other lines' backgrounds, but these are amazing in their own way. There's more variation and detail. They tell a story from one to the next with bits of action in the background setting the stage for the scene. I do prefer that more quiet, isolating feel where the world seems to fall away, but this just wasn't that kind of story. It needed to be epic. Alas, this line wasn't made to last, and while I may have found it memorable, many builders did not. But we would see some of its DNA in 2004's Knight's Kingdom 2, which despite the name doesn't have any direct connection to Knight's Kingdom 1. It's not a sequel exactly, more a spiritual successor, and this is where things get complicated. There's a lot to tackle with this one. I'm not even sure where to start, he says as he records this. Well, it's a far more character and story-driven castle theme than any before and many since. Rather than a clear-cut red versus blue deal, we got a diverse band of very distinct knights hailing from different provinces in the Morcia Kingdom. Danju the wolf, Centus the bear, Rascus the monkey, and Jaco the hawk, later joined by King Matthias, of course a lion keeping with tradition. In fact, why didn't they just call it Knights of Morcia? That would have been just as catchy, I think, and less confusing. There were novels, comics, and games that all had decent writing from what I can remember, even a trading card game. Kinda reminds me of something. The story's actually pretty simple, as the purportedly wise King Matthias is portrayed and imprisoned by Vladik, and it's up to a troop of colorful warriors to save him. Yeah, LEGO loves this type of story. We've seen it done in Ninjago, in Bionicle. In fact, that's a complaint I've gotten from a couple of people, that I mention Bionicle rather frequently on this show, and they just don't care for that. Well, it's going to be difficult to avoid talking about it here. I mean, what do these characters look like to you? Lines like Bionicle and, yes, Galador create a fair bit of division, and between this and some Bionicle-themed system playsets, I saw LEGO try to close that divide. They saw the people who only liked system, or only liked construction figures, and tried to satisfy both camps. Maybe even foster some crossover by encouraging builders to play with both, which at least worked on people like me. I think Exoforce was a culmination of that effort, a beautiful marriage of the two. And while I will talk about the system side of this theme, let's not kid ourselves. It's the figures that people mainly remember this line for, and they're nice, if simple. They're all the same skeleton, but it's neat that leaning more towards system than technic, you can dress them up, add a bit of texture or bulk with normal system pieces, whatever you can attach to customize them. And I like how these figures' shields can work as flags or extra plating, and then again those are just cardboard. And while some may find them kinda creepy, I really like the face printings, and there's something about the visors that just feels right to me. Stability is an issue, not enough to ruin the figures, but these ratchet joints just aren't as flexible as friction joints, so it's hard to keep them perfectly level, and it helps to stick them to a base plate, though you shouldn't have to do that. The backgrounds are neat. It's all one place, but you see it at different times of day to complement each character. A properly spiky Vladik appearing in the dead of night, although in some parts of the world they had very different backgrounds, like this one, Jaco setting out with a castle way in the back, or Vladik in a swamp. And this image of King Matthias with his castle behind him is just grand. The next year's figures were diversified in some ways, and homogenized in others. Like many Bionicle figures, they have functions activated by wheels on the back, and while the first wave of knights were literally the same, each knight in this wave swings or bashes in a unique way, and that's equal parts fascinating and disappointing to me, since you don't get to see how it happens. Each of these torsos is basically one giant block of plastic, pre-assembled and closed up before you can do anything about it. At least with a Toa, you got to build the torso and put the gears in yourself, or customize it to move in a different way. For all of Bionicle's critics, this is actually more specialized in that regard. Santos' torso even has a swivel because his function is so different. The unique breastplates and sturdier shields and swords do give these characters some individuality, but they've also lost it in other areas, all sharing the same shoulder and shin armor, and that does make them feel more samey. Vladik suffers most of all from this, having lost that sharp spiky look almost completely and blending in with the good knights, although his helmet is amazing. Don't get me wrong, these are very nice pieces, and they give these colors a lovely polished look, more lifelike, but in a way, this makes these figures even more like Bionicle. I don't have any of these figures, but I did play with them once or twice when I was young, and I've bought some pieces on Bricklink. And check this out, these shin guards fit magically over certain Bionicle pieces, so snug it's a match made in heaven. It helps that we get these in 6 different colors, some of which don't exist anymore, like dark gold and copper and metallic blue. You know what I miss? Metallic green. That was a cool color. Just imagine Raskus or a toe of air with it, or a toe of water or ice wearing metallic blue. Oh, that'd be gorgeous. There are so many lovely colors that LEGO has retired over the years, although they are bringing back a few that I never expected to see again. Even the joints show some lovely color choices, like dark tan mixed with dark green to go with a dark gold and normal green. That's a lot of dark. The final year's knights were very different. The only returning characters were Jaco, now a king himself, and Vladik, having failed to control the kingdom from within, declaring all-out war on it. The other 4 were rookie characters, 2 good knights and 2 evil knights, the latter of whom I believe were under a spell that was eventually broken. I think it would have been much more interesting if those guys chose to fight for Vladik. I really like these new knights. Their armor is even more of a departure, with even wilder colors and textures we'd never see again. Their animals were very cool, and instead of everyone using swords that make them all feel the same, we finally saw some unique weapons like an axe or a morning star. I think that might be my favorite, and the heavy hitters each came with their own brick-built battlement. I would have liked to see some more structures like these that are in scale with the figures. There were also these. And of course these characters are represented by proper minifigs in the other set. Oh come on, you cannot tell me that is Vladik. That is Johnny Thunder at a Renaissance fair. This is Vladik's minifig. Yeah, did I mention Ogul is his descendant? And now, finally, we'll talk about some system sets. For the most part, it's pretty standard. Vladik's sets in the first year are the only ones that visually stand out. That said, this castle is a work of art to me. It also includes a scorpion-shaped catapult that flings scorpions. That's just funny. The really cool thing about this castle is it's actually 2-in-1. Just swap out all the blue elements for red to symbolize Vladik's coming to power, and you avoid the problem the original Knights Kingdom had. Sort of. But as neat as that is, it's nowhere near as interesting as it almost was. For a time, it could have transformed from a good lion-shaped castle to an evil scorpion-shaped one. That's one of the coolest things LEGO never did. We also might have seen other animal-themed castles in set form, like a bear or a wolf or a hawk, but this is all we got. Pretty disappointing. They're still cool structures, if a little plain and modest, with plenty of neat little gimmicks to create action scenes like in a movie. I'd like to see Shadiversity take a look at these castles someday, see if they'd actually be effective or not. They're certainly out there. Year 2 has more spice to it, switching the focus to the knights on the attack after a fleeing Vladek. The landscape and structures are quite foreboding, like this is what the whole kingdom will look like if Vladek has his way. I love the lighting, the sun's always behind these ominous builds, and Vladek's castle, while pretty impressive in its own right, makes a perfect companion piece to Matthias's castle. I bet they'd look amazing together on the shelf. All in all, another solid year. The third year features far fewer sets, which isn't too surprising. We've seen this trend before, this 2.5 years deal numerous times, and this certainly won't be the last. They are very cool though, mostly focusing on Vladek's rogue knights. They have a bold aesthetic of their own, very harshly colored without falling back on the same evil dark reds and such. There's a bigger focus on minifigs, with more of them in each set, though I can't tell if these guys are wearing yellow or running around half naked. It really captures the nitty gritty of a war, like that is straight up Helm's Deep, and this reminds me of Osgiliath. I like the use of a visor on a battering ram, and, well, that's all I really have to say about Knight's Kingdom. It was a flawed but very solid theme with something for everybody to enjoy. Many products that try so hard to appeal to everybody end up being a jack of all trades but master of none, but this did excel at most of what it did. A good effort by LEGO in a stranger time. We'd see other lines come along that tried to be something of a spiritual successor to this, but we wouldn't see anything that quite succeeded at that for another decade in the form of 2016's Nexo Knights, which changed things up with a techno facelift. We have knights that still use maces and lances instead of the firearms they surely have, download extra abilities into their gear instead of imbuing them with magic spells, and ride hover bikes that look like horses. We have jets that look like swords and crossbows. We have robot squires. We have a wizard who dumps a backup of his brain into a computer inside a motorized castle that rolls on caterpillar treads and has Gatling guns. This theme was crazy, and I love it for that. There are a number of people who hated this medieval futurist aesthetic, who cry it doesn't make sense, but I think they pulled it off. I think they made it about as good as it could possibly be. There was a huge focus on the character designs, the minifigs, so many great villains of the week, so many larger-than-life builds, so many things separating and combining and reconfiguring. Something like the transforming castle may have been costly to pull off in 2004, but LEGO could easily make it work now if they really wanted to. The first year was the strongest, with a huge variety of vehicles and characters and monsters that were bursting at the seams with creativity, yet internally very consistent. The characters themselves weren't amazing, but I'm not going to pretend Jeko or the Lions weren't just as generic. They were serviceable, and Monstrix made a decent villain, changing forms numerous times as he accrued more power, though it was pretty lame that he forced Jester to be the villain again in the second year. Just let the guy live his life in peace, yeesh. The second year is what I think may have killed it. While the builds were still solid with a great play pattern, the aesthetic was muddier. They have to change it a little bit to make each year stand out from the last, but the individual colors of each knight sparsely sprinkled throughout the first year's vehicles began to dominate the new ones, so you'd have this unholy mix of neon and opaque orange, dark blue, and bright red or lime or ugh. I think they made it work, but only just barely. And the new villains, the Stone Monster Army, while pretty intimidating in their own right with a lot of cool shaping and imposing stature, were, well, they're rocks. And they're gray. I really like the parts that make them look like chunks of castles sprung to life, and it works well for this theme. But I just don't see that grabbing young kids' attention like the lava monsters did, and they probably just didn't like the abrupt change. There's an episode of the show where the Stone Army and Lava Army fight, and yeah, the stone guys are stronger, but I just don't find them quite as fun. But in a way I do. I mean, look at these characters. We got a harpy. How is that not a bigger thing? Somehow, they managed to make this boring. Even the final boss, the Colossus, wasn't anything to write home about. I mean, it's big, but eh. And this year, like Knight's Kingdom's third year and many other lines before it, only saw one wave. This is just sad. LEGO plans out these 3-year lines, but they keep underperforming and getting cut short, and it's an especially galling glimpse at what the line could have been, even after we thought all the imagination was bled out of it. The latest villains look like the Board, with pale skin, black armor, and green lighting. It's beautiful and sticks out like the lava monsters did. If these more eye-popping villains were the focus of the second year, I think that would have made a big difference. As for the Nexo Knights, some of the oranges are replaced with gold, which you'd think would mess up the colors even more, but it makes a much nicer transition between the trans orange, dark blue, and other elements than the garish, opaque orange ever did, and the colors are more balanced overall. The new builds, while a bit smaller on average than the second years, pack a ton of punch with as many great gimmicks crammed in as ever, making the most use of that space. The final set is Clay piloting a mech inside an even bigger mech. I love that in Gurren Lagann, I love it in Ninja Steel, I love it here. Things got rough, but I'd say it stuck the landing. Whether you love or hate the aesthetic, I think Nexo Knights has done a lot of good for LEGO. If you've been collecting other sets in the last couple years, just stop and remember how many of the sweet new pieces you're seeing in everything came from this line. It's a weird feeling to realize Nexo Knights was still being released when I first started LEGO Rewind. It was still a new theme, and it's the first system line since I began this series to end. In fact, it seems like a lot of things I like are dying. Castle themes don't sell as well as LEGO needs them to. They've tried to make it work time and again, and Nexo Knights was the strongest effort yet to keep it alive in an ever-changing world. But this might be the last we see of Castle for the foreseeable future. Construction has also been left behind. CCBS figures aren't a thing anymore. The armor in Nexo Knights seem to be on the right track to revitalizing it in some way, but that's gone too now. And the closest thing we have left are next year's Minecraft figures that have an arm mechanism similar to Knight's Kingdom and, well, Bionicle. And I really do like these. It's a great look. They look fun, but it's not fun to see so many things you like disappear. If none of this works in today's world, if it can't work with today's kids, well, it's enough to make a grown man wonder if he was the weird one, with bad taste, forever liking it. Jeez, that's a downer note to end on. We covered a lot today, holy cow. I need to get away from the computer. That's it for today. If you want to support my work, please check out my graphic novel series Planet Ripple. You can buy the books on Amazon or read an early draft of the first book for free. Links to everything in the description. Thanks for watching. Next month we'll be diving into Mindstorms. Doodles!
Robbers are attacking the castle! They don't play by the rules at the new LEGO Knights Kingdom. The evil robbers will try anything to nab the royal jewels. But you've got your own ideas. Give them the axe, or a blast from the past. There's nothing you can build to stop these thieves. Well, almost nothing. Your world, your rules.